Hello, lovely people. I wanted to record a very impromptu video without any script, and I'm recording from my computer, so hopefully the audio is okay because it's all fresh in my mind. I just did a coaching call for the art of memoir, and something like this came up, and then I received an email from a subscriber who has read my latest email and watched the latest video about book proposals, memoir, manuscripts, and how you need to actually write the manuscript to write a pitch that's going to work. And I just really want to clarify some things. So, because when people ask me questions, particularly when someone goes to the effort of writing an articulate and lovely email, like Frank did this morning, thank you, Frank, asking in such a nice way, I realised that so many more people must have this question, because I think the statistics are, if someone goes to the effort of emailing a company or a brand or a product or a business about something, that represents at least 50 or 100 people who also have that thought or question. And it also came up on our coaching call for the art of memoir today. So what I want to talk about is why your book proposal for your memoir is perhaps not working. You're getting crickets. So perhaps you've sent out your book proposal, or you've even sent out the manuscript, or you've sent out a query letter to multiple publishers and you have heard absolutely nothing. So memoir publishing, when you're not a celebrity, is very, very different to non-fiction book publishing in general, and also fiction publishing. Everything I teach is for the traditional book publishing market, okay? So very conservative. Sales process is very conservative, and sales process differs depending on the category of literature. Memoir is a separate category to general non-fiction, okay? So what I've noticed, and this is one of the biggest misconceptions that I really want to nip in the bud here, and this is why Frank emailed me, and I believe a lot of other people have this misconception, is with non-fiction, the general view is that you can sell a non-fiction book on proposal, okay? So you don't need to write the whole draft first. Now, non-fiction, prescriptive non-fiction, how-to books, business books, other kinds of non-fiction, you can do that if you have some sample chapters and they don't need to be fully developed. You just need the clear outline. You can do that because a lot of nonfiction is sold on platform, on the trend, the topic. It's also not a narrative. So nonfiction is a lot more, it's a simpler structure. A narrative, a personal narrative, is a more complex structure. Probably giving a bit too much detail here. The bottom line is, if you are writing a memoir, if you're trying to sell a memoir, if you want to write or want to sell a memoir, you cannot get a book deal from just writing the proposal, because you will need to write some or all, preferably all, of the manuscript first. The reason for this, and so Frank, who emailed me, had only written one chapter but had written the whole book proposal, and I know he's not alone. I have a lot of people who email me, particularly in America. There's a lot of book coaches who haven't written or sold memoirs, who coach that you write the book proposal first. Now, for nonfiction, this generally works. Memoir is very, very different, particularly when you're not a celebrity, because you do not have a platform. You're not, publishers aren't going to vie for your memoir unless there's all these other things going on, which I teach a lot of that in the Book Deal Accelerator. It's a lot of like different inbuilt urgency that you can add to your book proposal, to your platform. You need to have a level of urgency to actually sell your book in the traditional book publishing market. So if you're not a celebrity. So the reason that you can't sell your memoir on proposal alone, if you haven't written at least a fair chunk of the manuscript, because firstly, the first places the agents, editors, publishers look is the sample chapters for a memoir proposal. The reason for this is because, as I said, memoir is a narrative non-fiction. So this means it needs a compelling storyline. It needs to be very well structured. A memoir that's going to sell in the traditional book publishing market, a memoir that is not a celebrity memoir, so the type of memoir writing that I teach and coach and that I've written is literary memoir, travel memoir, hybrids, coming of age, a memoir written by someone who is unknown in the market, unknown in the world, pretty much, except in, their writing circles or whatever. I didn't have a platform. I'm not famous, but I sold both of my memoirs. This kind of memoir needs to be written before you pitch it. Now, I sold A Letter from Paris on short proposal and sample. I'd written, I think it was 3 chapter samples and the full chapter outline. But that was because I had already proven that I could write a memoir start to finish. I could follow through a narrative start to finish because I had published in that particular category of literature before. So the reason that publishers, agents, editors, and I just spoke to and confirmed with my agent friend who helps me on my Art of Memoir coaching calls, the reason that publishers need to see that you have the full manuscript or a really nice chunk of sample chapters for memoir particularly, different to non-fiction, which you can sell on proposal only. The reason is because memoir is narrative non-fiction, as I said, and the book proposal is like a sales document. And pitching something, outlining it, doing all the marketing spiel around it. Many, many people outsource their book proposals. I don't think you should personally. I think you should write your own book proposal, but many people do. Many people hire ghostwriters, hire ghost editors to help them with their book proposals, either editing it or writing it almost completely, or coaching them through the writing process. And the problem with this is when the publisher looks at that, reads that book proposal as though you've written it, they're going to think that that's a fair sense of your writing style, your ability, and they will expect you to follow through every single thing that you've promised with a finished manuscript of that caliber. Now, the reason that you need to actually have the manuscript ready is because if they look at the proposal, there's many reasons, but I'm going to just give you a few. If they look at the book proposal and go, okay, great, strong hook, compelling, they're going to go straight to the sample chapters to see what your writing style is like, what your voice is like, what your point of view is, so many other things that need to be conveyed in the sample chapters. They're going to look at the sample chapters or chapter, if, as in Frank's case, who emailed me today, he'd only written 1 sample chapter. Let's say they like it. Let's say it has a strong hook. Let's say it's compelling. They will want to see as much more of the material as possible, and they will need to see that before you can actually have a contract, because traditional book publishing is very, very conservative. They outlay a lot of money on a first-time author and on a book contract, a book publishing deal. Now, a lot of people are really, really naive, and it's fine. Everyone thinks this when you've never written or published a book before, and they think that they can sell an idea. You need to actually prove that you can write the book. And the reason that you need to do this for memoir more than, say, prescriptive nonfiction, which, you can do a few really basic sample chapters, but if your proposal is really good enough, you could sell that quickly, is with memoir, particularly when you're not a celebrity, so literary memoir, this is really sold on the writing, on the voice, on you as a writer. And if you can't show them this, they're going to, recoil because there's too much risk involved. It's not a sure, it's not a good risk for them, because publishing, it's all about the money for them. They will need to account for developmental work with you. They will assume that they need to develop the manuscript with you, and this all costs. This costs editors, this costs time, and anything that they can do to mitigate that, anything you can do to mitigate that risk to them, such as proving that the manuscript's already written. Yes, they'll need to edit it. Yes, it may need even more structural work, but if they get a good sense of that manuscript from the sample chapters, and then you send them the full manuscript, as good as you can possibly get it, with the beginning, the middle, and the end structured really, really compellingly, then you're more likely to get a book deal. And I actually do not know anyone who has sold a memoir on proposal with no massive sample. Now, if you have a TikTok video go viral and you've got a platform and your TikTok videos are based on, I think I saw this recently in a memoir group, a lady sold her memoir for something like 6 figures in a big deal, and it's based on these TikTok videos that she's been doing that have gone viral. Now, she has actually written some of the manuscript there, though, as well as the proposal. And the length of time that she's been doing these TikTok videos, I'm not going to say what it's about because I could be getting some of the details of this wrong, because it was a few months ago that I saw this deal in Publishers Weekly. She has actually written a fair chunk of the story. So I get emails all the time, and sometimes just random messages on Facebook or Instagram from people saying, hey, I've got this great idea. I just found out that, I don't know, my uncle was the first Buddhist monk in Tibet. How do I get a book deal for this? And it's like, you have to actually do some writing first. And this is what isn't glamorous. And I know that people don't want to hear this, but you need to actually figure out how to write that book, that memoir, and structure it as compellingly as possible before you start sending out your book proposal. Because when you send out your book proposal, if you get a request for the full manuscript, you can't then say to the person or the agent or the publisher, oh, just hang on a minute, let me get back to you in 12 months when I've written and revised and polished it. Because they might have moved on, well, they will have moved on, and they'll probably move publishing companies. Publishers, agents, it's all about timing. So you're going to lose your chance if you if you waste your time sending out this proposal and trying to get an agent before you've even written, not just written the memoir, but made sure that it's structured really, really well. The reason that I say this as well is because some of the people that join my programs, I have one program that is specifically for selling the book and one that is specifically for writing the memoir and structuring it well. And these are separate programs because they are 2 different goals. Many people who come into my programs have already been sending out their proposal or their full manuscript draft and getting absolute crickets for 6 to 12 months. And I can usually identify very, very quickly why this is. And for those people who haven't written the book proposal but have just sent out the manuscript, and so you might be watching this saying, hey, Louisa, I've written my manuscript. Now can I send the book proposal? You've got to make sure that your memoir manuscript is actually structured really, really well. And by structured really well, I mean, if you want to sell your memoir manuscript and you're not a celebrity and you want to sell it to the traditional book publishing world, it needs to have certain things in the structure. And these, I talk about these in a lot of my free and paid webinars, trainings, masterclasses. The most important one is the hook. The hook is where you begin the story. Now, on our coaching call this morning, I was talking with one of my writers about their hook. And the problem is what you need to write to get to the story is often going to differ from the story that needs to be told and sold. And so this writer, who hadn't received any feedback, response, acceptance on her full submission of her memoir draft, did not have a strong hook and did not have a clear hook. And the reason that, hopefully we've identified it now since our call, but the reason this matters so much, to clarify these structural components with someone who knows traditional publishing, before you've sent out the manuscript, started the submission process, written the full manuscript. The reason it's so important is because the hook is actually the beginning of the story, and the hook is the most compelling point of the story. So the hook needs to go into every sales document that you send, which includes every element of your book proposal. The hook needs to be front and center of your query, and the hook is going to make up the overarching theme, the through line, and the beginning, the most compelling beginning, and the sample chapters that you send of your memoir. And so if you just go and write your memoir without getting any kind of structural help with these sort of, I call them the principles of the memoir genre as it pertains to traditional book publishing, you won't get any response, because memoir sells, the things that sell memoir are very, very different to what sells celebrity memoir. So literary memoir or memoir by unknowns, best-selling memoirs such as Wild by Cheryl Strayed or Educated by Tara Westover, this is sold from, the hook is where these stories all begin, and that is what compels more than one or two or five people to read your story. That is what differentiates a publication standard memoir. That is what differentiates a publication standard memoir from just a PDF document you're going to give to your grandma or grandpa or your children or your grandchildren, okay? It needs to be a story, a narrative, a strong narrative, a compelling narrative. That first 20 pages needs to be the absolute most compelling part of the story that sets things up for things to come. And that will go into your proposal, and that will form the beginning of your story. I learnt this the hard way. My first memoir, I wrote 100,000 words I had to chuck out because it took too long to get to the hook. The hook was buried right at the end. And I'm grateful that a publisher met with me and gave me a really, really brutal rejection, because I discovered that is actually what sells memoir. And I would have been like the 99% of memoir writers who send out their proposal or their drafts without knowing this stuff, and I would have just had silence. And I actually think silence is worse than rejection because there's no feedback or information given. So in summary, I'm sorry to say this isn't glamorous. I'm probably not going to get any likes on this video. And I can tell because all of my free checklists, guides, and videos on writing a best-selling pitch, people download them in droves. And also anything I do about the book proposal, people always want to buy it or download it. Anytime I start talking about writing the manuscript and how to write the manuscript, maybe 1 in 20 people open their eyes. But the thing is, this is what I teach. This is what I teach in The Art of Memoir: how to write a compelling publication standard memoir, how to clarify that hook, how to know what to put in the beginning, the middle, and the end of your story, how to differentiate your memoir and make sure that it is of publication standard, not just a document that you're going to leave on the hard drive for your grandchildren to read. I'm only interested in teaching you how to reach your goal of being a published author. If you want to be self-published, if you want to just knock up your book and do something on Kindle or print on demand, that's fine. That is not what I teach. I teach you how to structure a memoir for the high standards of the traditional book publication industry. And the reason that it's high standards, it's hard, it's difficult, is because when you're not a celebrity and you're trying to write and sell a memoir, you need to work harder with the hook because people don't know the hook. When you're a celebrity, people already know the hook about you, these universal themes, the most unique part of your life story that's gone into the story. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but I just wanted to say, in answer to Frank's question and all of the people that I know are doing this, because there's a lot of book proposal workshops, and non-fiction book proposals are very commonly mixed up with memoir book proposals. You need to write the draft, you need to start the story in the right spot, and you need a sense of structure with memoir more than any other genre. And if you would like some help with this, my Art of Memoir program covers all of it, start to finish, page 1 to finish draft. I teach you how to revise. I teach you how to assess your manuscript. I teach you what goes into a compelling manuscript. And we've just added monthly coaching, which I'm loving. And this is really, really powerful to help you get clarity on your hook, on your themes, on any part of the structural component that is really confusing you, because structure is really what differentiates a non-fiction manuscript from a narrative non-fiction manuscript. The structure is more complex with narrative because you need to structure it as a compelling story, and you need to take yourself out of it to be able to do that. So that's why I think that the coaching element is really helpful, because it helps you see your story as a reader, as a viewer, as a listener would see it and go, oh, okay, that's the bit that I was missing that is actually most compelling to a reader. This is the problem with the hook, and why I do think that you do need some element of coaching to actually find your own hook, because the hook is very personal, and it's often something that we take for granted in our lives, and it's information that the reader needs, and it's also the beginning of the story. The hook is really one of the most, if not the most important part of selling a memoir to the traditional book publishing market. So anyway, I hope that helps. Don't go sending out a book proposal without writing the draft. If you'd like to write the draft, if you'd like to get help structuring the draft, if you've written the draft and it needs to be restructured, revised, you've sent it out and received nothing, sign up for my How to Write a Draft in 6 Months class, and I'll also send you all the information about our next intake of the Art of Memoir, and which now has monthly story coaching, which is fun. Okay, I hope this has helped you.